I'd like to call the Tuesday, August the 11th, Harnett County Board of Commissioners work session into order. Get my tongue twisted this morning first thing. If you would, join me in our pledge of allegiance to the flag and our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you pray with me? Father, we thank you for the day you've provided. We thank you, Father, that you're in charge of all things. You're the creator, sustainer, ruler of this universe. Give us wisdom from on high, dear God, as we attend to the affairs that affect the citizens of Harnett County. Give us as a board of commissioners and county manager and staff those things which would be pleasing and acceptable in your sight, that we may be found faithful servants of what you've entrusted to us. For in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Our first order of business is Hart's Transportation with Barry Blevins and Larry Smith, but I don't think I see Larry Smith, but
Oh, it's another Larry Smith.
the other Larry Smith. Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
We all got a mask on now. we have to, it's going to play to a do.
I have more hair than the old one.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you very much for allowing us to do a little briefing here. First of all, I'd like to say that it's real important that we emphasize that, as you all know, across the state, everybody's suffering. Every system, whether it's transit, airports, or all those infrastructure issues, everybody's suffering and trying to figure out a way through it. So first thing I'd really like to say is I want to thank the leadership here in the county to help us and to figure out how we're doing, how we provide transportation, their support in the decisions we put forward, and it's been a trying experience for all of us across the state. Excuse me. Nobody gives us directives, so we use information that's provided by the CDC, public transit associations, national and state, other jurisdictions on how they operate. I will say that every operation across the state is different, and so we try to pick what's best for Hart's, what's best for our community, and we have since then slowed our transportation down, practicing social distancing and all those things. So it's kind of put a burden on not just the riders, but also the people that can't get a ride, because we have to select who we're taking. So I have to say that Larry and his staff have worked very hard to figure this out. And we're very proud of our drivers who go in harm's way every day, because you just don't know who you're picking up and what they may have or not have. So if all I'm going to do is do an introduction, and then Larry's going to drive, because he's the expert and has lived this every single moment of every day. It's not a 8-hour day. It's a sometimes 24-hour day, sometimes a very long day, and it's 7 days a week usually. So if you would. So we are following the governor's phases, the guidelines. We changed transportation at phase 1, which essentially we only transport life essential people. So that would be dialysis, people going to medical appointments, people going to get groceries, people going to get pharmaceuticals. And then we sprinkle in, when people are going to work, we sprinkle those folks in where we can. Again, practicing social distancing, and Larry will show you that, how it works out within the van. On April 6th, we asked the board to approve a fare waiver. That was for 2 reasons. Because of everybody's pockets were pretty hard, and also so we wouldn't exchange money with people. That fare waiver is still ongoing. This year, the General Assembly did not approve our rope funds, if you may be aware. That's approximately $289,000 we annually receive from the state to help operate the transit system. We are available for CARES Act. We have several different varieties. There's the number, I won't bore you with the numbers, but essentially there's the grant we apply for every year, 5311. We're getting CARES Act dollars for that. Several rounds of it, so that's really good. 5307, which is a dollars allocated to us because we are associated with FAMPO. And so that's, anyway, the total amount that we may be eligible to get is $785,000, which very, is going to help us as we try to move forward. Since January, Hart's has experienced a 52% drop per month in ridership. And Larry's got the real numbers, but that's a huge change, 52% on average per month. We don't ride or drive or give rides to people that would usually would. Hart's continues to provide non-emergency medical transportation. During that transportation for different places, we're aware of at least 2 COVID positive passengers we've taken, and we're not sure of how many are not. They're not actually positive that we know of. We do ask people when they get on, have you been sick? There's a long list of things. Wear your mask. Have you been sick in the last few days? That kind of thing. If you're running a temperature, and if they are, we don't transport them. We continue operating in the county and out of county for the Medicaid destinations and medical appointments. Again, passenger masks are required to enter the vehicle. Our current PPE that we use are masks for our drivers, masks, gloves, hand sanitizers everywhere. We also have a temporary barrier between the driver and the passenger compartment. The temporary is a shower curtain, and that's what we're trying to get acrylic for more permanent stuff. Larry and staff every day clean their vehicles, sometimes twice a day, depending on their passengers. He sprays within the vehicles, and that reduced the normal time we have for transporting people. Like you would normally just keep going, but now we got to stop and clean. So that reduces our ability to do those. We just learned Friday that DMA, Medicaid, is requiring DSS to provide transportation for COVID positive passengers. Up to this point, we haven't had to deal with that too often. We've had to take a couple home that we knew were positive, but we try our best not to transport those folks. So now what we're realizing is we're going to have to do it. And because we've reached out to find out if any other vendors in the area provide that. And I mean, we've asked everywhere and nobody does it. So some other systems across the state are doing that. So I'll just say that right now we're looking real hard on how we should approach that type of transportation. Essentially, if you think about it, the largest vehicle in his fleet that is if somebody doesn't need a wheelchair, we're going to put that one person in there with the windows down, the whole 9 yards, and it's going to put more stress on the system. We're still looking to purchase additional PPE, including may include Tyvek and then the shields and the whole 9 yards in order to dress up to do that. Luckily, I don't think we're going to have that many because, again, the CDC standards are to stay home, not go to the doctor. So hopefully we'll see that. But overall, we are still trying to figure out how, when we get to phase 3, what are we going to do? I mean, because we believe that even though phase 3 may come in, because that's our goal, Mark, is that phase 3, that we're going to have to practice social distancing. What that does is, again, and Larry will show you the numbers, it reduces our ability to provide transportation for certain groups that we have historically provided transportation for. And that people that are handicapped, people that use Bell Academy, people that uses JCI, those type of groups are hard to pick up and maintain social distancing and provide the transportation for the essential folks. So when we get past the essential, again, social distance play a part. So we have several models that Larry's going to show you. And those models really boil down to, will Hart's provide transportation while practicing social distancing, or we will not? There's no in between. And so we come here to seek guidance. I mean, we have worked with our TAB. We've worked with other communities, other transit systems, trying to figure this out. So if we were getting questions from those groups when we're going to go back to transporting. I just got a call or an email from John Matthews asking about CCCC, when we're going to start providing that transportation. JCI is constantly asking us. We're not sure at this moment. Right now, we know that we would like to stay the same until at least phase 3, and then figure out how we're going forward. We have a couple of solutions we'll introduce when Larry does his presentation. We think we have a use for CARES Act to maybe help us help alleviate a little bit, and we'll show that in a few minutes. So if you have any questions for me to begin with, I'm glad to take them. If not, then I'll hand it over to Larry, and then we'll interject where we need it.
It's more of a comment, but you said you had a 52% reduction in riders.
Yes, sir.
When you go back to phase 3 and into 4, they'll probably be back. That's going to really hit you pretty hard.
It's going to hit us hard. Now, I have to admit, some of the 52% is self-inflicted, as I like to call it, because we know we had to social distance. In order to social distance, we had to take groups and not take them. And they've been amenable and understanding, but again, the pressures we're getting now are, when are you going to start back up? And so, again, the model for us is whether we social distance on the vehicle or we don't. And our biggest concern, and I'm sure leadership will echo the same thing, our biggest concern is if we get one of our drivers who gets sick, that it's going to spread through it very quickly, because we work in small areas. We do maintain, people don't come inside the building like they used to. But the point being is that they all share the same rides, even though we're riding or wiping them down and cleaning them. And so that's what our biggest concern is that, because we know it spreads quickly.
I see your heart trucks out sometimes if I'm going around there. Always obeying the speed limit and always stopping at stop signs.
Well, again, that's what Larry and his team emphasizes safety. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of questions. And I feel your pain when you're talking about the safety of the drivers. It's also the safety of the people that's on that van. So, do you have a way, do they wear masks, right?
I'm sorry, Ms. McCoy.
They do.
Do they wear masks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Another thing I want to ask, is the social distance.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said that, do you have a way to check people's temperature?
We do not.
That's what you need. Because you're risking putting your health in jeopardy as well as those other people that are on there. And these citizens that you're picking up, a lot of them have underlying conditions.
Absolutely.
So you do need some temperature check. And I would suggest that you get a thermometer and check people's temperature as they load that bus. And you said that if they're diagnosed with COVID, you all don't transport them, right?
At this time, we're not transporting people we know have COVID.
I understand that.
But we have, like for example, we had an example of a dialysis patient that went to work to get treatment, and then they called us up and said on the way home she's got COVID, and so we transported her home and just scrubbed everything down, and we've done that a couple times.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wise to do, but I still think that you should have some way of checking people's temperature before they load that bus. Because you don't need to be transporting people that have a temperature, because that affects everybody on that bus.
And I agree.
That's basically most of my questions. I just want to make sure that you all are safe as well as the citizens are safe.
And we appreciate it. That's our primary, because without our drivers, we can't provide the transportation anyway.
One more question. You said now you're down to, you lost 52% of the people that you're transporting.
The ridership, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So,
that's on average per month.
There is no way for that to be prevented, simply because of this people don't understand how dangerous this virus is. And so I can understand that to some degree, but I don't understand people that have doctor's appointments. You see, you're no longer transporting those people, right?
We are.
You are?
We are the primary or the only provider of Medicaid transportation in Harnett County. So because we can't refuse, we take people to,
Right.
they become part of our folks that are taking up all the room on the bus.
Okay.
And they normally always have. And so we do take them to their medical appointments. Some of the road bumps, the misery, I guess, for patients and for us too, was that doctors' offices wanted us to stay and wait for them. And we can't. We got to move on. So they've since learned, but there's been a lot of changes and adjustments as we've gone through the last few months. But we do provide medical transportation. That is it's a necessity, life's necessities. So dialysis, medical transportation, appointments, pharmaceutical runs, and food runs. Those are the type of things we're doing.
I'm going to ask you two more questions.
Sure.
Is there not a way for you to put some plexiglass up there in the front from the driver, from the
Okay, so,
citizens?
yes, ma'am, and Larry has reached out to some of the bus companies that provide that, the brackets and all. Currently, we actually have a shower curtain that blocks, but we definitely want to make that a permanent, going forward, no matter what. It's going to be a permanent piece of what we're doing.
I think that's wise.
And we hope to use the CARES Act dollars for that.
Okay. One more question, and it's not a question.
I'm here for you, ma'am.
I'm wanting to make notice that you're more or less selecting the people that you take based on their health issues and all of that. That is the right way to go, but just be careful how you do it, because it can come back and bite you. That's all I'm saying. We recognize that this is a difficult time for everybody.
Everybody.
For everybody. And you all are in a more difficult position than we are. But protect yourself too, okay?
Thank you very much. And you bring something up that I need to point out too, that the majority of our driver population is of the susceptible type.
Okay. Well, the reason I brought it up was because there have always been complaints, but you don't want any complaints to turn into genuine legal action. So.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? We'll let Larry do his presentation, then we'll be available for questions also.
Good morning, everybody. I'll try to be quick and thorough. As Barry's already discussed, I'll go here to the first slide. This is a breakdown of the funding that we are eligible to receive. For phase one of the 5311 CARES, we have already been approved and we have submitted our claim, so we're just awaiting the check from DOT for $349,369. Phase two, we are approved on the NCDOT side. We are waiting for the FTA to approve the overall application for the state, and then we will submit one document and we'll be eligible to start making claims on that $250,000. Phase three is really unknown. We've heard word that it could be just based on necessity for the transit systems in the state, or it could be a version of capital for counties to actually purchase, vans, all sorts of security systems and things like that. For the 5307 CARES, that application has been sent in, and we are awaiting FTA approval on that. And that should be within the next 2 weeks for 5307 and the second round of 5311. We should be notified if the FTA has approved that, and we could start submitting reimbursement claims for driver salaries, mileage, fuel, possibly insurance. We're just waiting on them to actually send out what we're actually allowed to claim for part two. And as of right now, this is kind of what my staff has been dealing with phase 1 and 2 of the governor's orders. We're following all their recommendations for social distancing, cleaning the vehicles and everything, which is placing a little bit of, an issue on what we're doing in our schedule daily. Prior to COVID, we did provide chartered and taxi transportation to certain individual agencies that Barry already had mentioned, such as JCI, Bell's Academy, Stevens Center, and the ARC. And what that's really doing for us now, we're getting a lot of calls asking when we're going to start resuming transportation for these agencies. We simply don't have the assets right now following the governor's guidance and the CDC's guidance to actually open up the floodgates, as I call it, and start doing transportation. Currently, we're doing Life Essential, as Barry had already mentioned, dialysis, Medicaid, nutritional, pharmaceutical, and those requests are currently dominating our schedule. In between there, we are adding in dial-a-rides going to work. We have some going to schools and things like that, just based on what we actually can do with the amount of seats left on the vehicle that day. And if we did open back up to our normal amount of transportation, those agencies we transported in the past, such as JCI and everything, would fill our schedule immediately with all the additional medical that we have going on. So that's what we're trying to figure out, where we go from here to open up in phase 3. And this right here actually give you a little bit better of a breakdown. Before COVID, this is an average month of the types of fare types and citizens that we transported: Medicaid, JCI, EdTap, dial-a-ride, and COA. That's normally what we do. Somewhere around 5,500 to 6,000 trips per month is about an average for our system. And this shows currently what's going on, the actual reduction in our system. That Medicaid is simply dominating right now because they are essential. They're the ones that require life essential treatments. The majority of our Medicaid is actually dialysis and cancer patients. So those are the ones right now that are really dominating the system, and they will continue to dominate the system. And as Barry mentioned, we created some models. And some of these models I agree with, some I don't. We had to create them because we based them off certain other systems, what they're trying to do during this pandemic. This shows right with our current ridership with social distancing on the left. That is what is required every single day. 29 vehicles, and we only have 26. Drivers 29 to 31, we have that amount of staff, but we're only transporting that amount there, and it requires that many assets. Without social distancing, it only requires 9 vehicles and 9 drivers, not our entire full fleet and staff. This is a model that my scheduler worked very hard on to complete. This is our ridership with the addition of demand response. This is what, in our building that we're recommending we open up with when phase 3 starts. We would continue to transport all of our medical, our pharmaceutical, our nutritional, and then we would average 19 seats available for other types of trips, going to work, going to educational facilities, et cetera. That's practicing social distancing. That's what we would have available daily. And if we do not practice social distancing, this is based off the same model, we would have an additional 34 seats available daily if we had everybody on the vehicle transported as normal. Model 3 is one that I want to stay away from, but we created it because other systems have done it just to show what's out there. This is a centralized location for demand response. They would still have to call us to get a ride, but we would tell them, we're going to meet you at this destination at this time, and we're going to drop you off at the same time. The issues that we all see with it is people call transportation because they don't have rides anyway. So how are they going to get to this destination? They get on the vehicle, and how are they going to get home from this destination? So this is something I do not want to go towards. I believe this is our second most feasible scenario for demand response. We would zone the county out by townships. Monday through Friday, these townships would have X and X amount of vehicles, X and X amount of seats, and we'd pick them up at their home as usual and take them back home. It would just simply limit, someone going to work every single day in one of those areas. They can only get a ride with Hearts 1 day a week. And this shows our ridership loss. Staff had created a simple chart just to show by funding type how many rides we've done each month in each one of those funding types. And you can see it's a significant drop, and the one I'd like to concentrate on is the DARW. That is the dollar rides with the waived ridership fees that you all had given us permission to do, and it's actually a lot more than we thought. People are enjoying it because it's free, everybody's pockets are tight right now, and they actually have given us compliments like, I really appreciate you waiving the fees because it is really helping my family out. So that's a good thing that has come from this. An example of our vehicles prior and during COVID, it really shows we can only put 4 because we can't put anybody behind the driver, next to the driver, and we have to give as much social distancing as feasible inside of these vehicles. It is not 6 feet, it is sometimes 5 foot, 4.5 foot, but we had to do that just to give people transportation to their medical appointments. And this is the interior of one of the wheelchair vehicles. We can transport an additional wheelchair. For our current models of transportation, we X an additional one out in the case that we receive an ADA request and we have to transport that person the next day, so we have that seat available so we don't have to shuffle and plan and possibly, take somebody off of the vehicle. And as of right now, me and Barry and staff, we have discussed purchasing new vehicles with money from reimbursement from the CARES Act. And this I should have labeled as an additional model. The purchase of these 2 vehicles for us would give us the availability to possibly pick up all of these additional agencies such as JCI and Bell's Academy practicing social distancing, because they are 20, 22 seat vehicles, so that does give us that option. And without social distancing, it gives us 40 additional seats for 2 vehicles, which would really help our system, because for our system to grow, and we have needed it, we need additional vehicles, because every single day we're turning down 3 to 5 people at a minimum because we don't have space.
Now, are you required to buy new vehicles?
We are required to purchase new vehicles, but that funding comes from NCDOT. We have purchased vehicles on the county side in the past. And that's what we are trying to do here, because DOT only gives us money to replace vehicles. They won't give us additional vehicles. It's been, I think, 10, 15 years since DOT has actually given an expansion vehicle to any system. That puts every transit agency in a very hard place, because for you to be successful, you need to grow. And for you to grow, you have to have vehicles.
And so what size vehicles typically do you get?
We get the transits, which are 20-foot, 11 or 13 seat vehicles for ambulatory, and then the non-ambulatory are 7-seaters, but if you put 3 wheelchairs in there, you can only fit 4 passengers.
It's important to note, though, DOT maintains the title for those vehicles until they're replaced, and then they become an asset to the county. So those vehicles that DOT purchases through the 5311 belongs to them.
There's a question.
So as far as that.
You said something about purchasing some of the vehicles with the CARES Act money.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that possible? You can do that?
With the 5307, if I'm correct, Mayor, that's what we can leverage to purchase vehicles after we seek reimbursement from DOT. We'll seek reimbursement for salaries and yada yada, and we'll get the money in, and we could purchase vehicles with that funding. Because 5307, you're allowed to purchase capital.
Okay, that's cool.
And that's what we're looking at. And the price on the vehicles, I'm waiting on the real estimate, but this was the ballpark I was given by our vehicle provider. It's about $85,000 per vehicle turnkey. That's cameras are already installed, radios are in there, and that's around $10,000 that we would have to pay for on the county side every single time we get a vehicle. So that would be all purchased, included in the purchase, but there are discounts available purchasing new vehicles, so I'm waiting to see what type of discounts Ford is willing to give us purchasing that vehicle. So we're expecting the price to decrease a couple $1,000s at least.
I have a question on the, this is not a secret about the financial woes of the North Carolina Department of Transportation.
Yes,
So, the monies through CARES Act or anything that's associated with NCDOT, is that monies that are coming from the federal down to the state, down to us, or is this money generated through North Carolina coffers through DOT?
You are absolutely correct, federal to state to county level.
Well, I think we'd have a little better, if it's coming federal to state to us, if it's state to us, based on all the financial woes DOT has got right now. And it's not just this, it's multiple different things. We're seeking money from through DOT, if it's from the jet port to construction of I-95. That is, everything's kind of not permanent hold, but slowed down hold, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So then, I guess the timeliness of getting, because I see we've got a pretty good laundry list of monies that we're anticipating coming in, and I guess we don't have any idea as to when these monies will even be available that you've already shown us, do we?
Phase one of the CARES Act, that money is available. We're just waiting for them to send us a check because it was already approved, cleared, and we already sent our reimbursement in.
Reimbursement, not a.
Yeah, reimbursement, but still, we have spent the money, we're waiting for the reimbursement. I get that, but it's still taking taxpayer dollars to.
That is correct. Other systems that I do know have received their funds already after their claim, about 2-3 weeks. We're hoping, just like you said, with DOT, me and Barry agreed, we looked at several things, and they kept asking us to do more and more to receive these funds. And the things they were asking for, we're like, well, they're looking at taking money from us with the stuff they were asking. But as of right now, I was wrong. They're giving us the full amount they told us we were, could apply for. And this is just a breakdown of what the vehicles we're proposing. It's a lot bigger, and it has the side entry wheelchair ramps, which is a lot safer for the citizens because we can pull up directly to their driveway if they have a slanted driveway, so we don't have to wait in the road. That's just another safety factor that we have to, we factor into there, so it's a lot better for the passenger. And this is a dot map of every single location we went to pick up somebody in the month of June during COVID. I couldn't believe it either. That's why it takes so long to go from point to point, because we could be going from the northernmost to the southwesternmost. It just depends, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to get from destination 1 to 2. And for anybody who likes the heat map version, that's what simply this is. GIS did this for us. It shows Dunn is our hotspot. And at this time, I'm done. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one. Have you had a lot of patients with dialysis to end up with the COVID?
As of now, we know of one that was positive,
Okay.
one that was presumed positive that had to go to the alternate facility in Cary. That's where they send any kind of dialysis patient within, I think, the Tri-County area to go for treatment. But as of now, we only know of one positive.
Well, we're lucky then. I serve on the State Health Council Board, and we get that report. So, Tom is lucky.
Yes, this question's for Manager Stewart. I know the health department has got, for lack of a better word, the thermometer guns where you can, like when I go to the doctor, they shoot me as soon as I come in and see if I got a temperature. Do we not have those available so Harts could actually have those in the vehicles or have access to, so we could get them? Or
We do. John Rouse, the health director, has bought several that departments can either check out, or he can buy them for them, or they can buy them themselves. So there is a mechanism in place where they can get the thermometers.
if they think it would be beneficial, I can see where you're going, because, that way, if you guys think that's something you actually need, I would, I'll leave that up to you, but I can see where it would be for those of us who go in any doctor's office, you're going to sanitize your hands. That's the first thing they're going to do. And then if you don't, you hit you go the opposite direction from the doctor. So I think we need to be safe to our employees and to the people that we're transporting and the other people that's in the vehicle. So
That's definitely something. I'll look at the cost, because I would have to purchase 26, because I'd have to have one on each vehicle.
Could that be purchased through the health department as opposed to?
Well, with Harts, the way Harts funding is, I would recommend that Harts buy their own, since they have CARES Act funding.
Okay.
and then they could file back for reimbursement back through. So that's where I was going with it. So good. All right.
That's why. That's how we purchase our PPE. We're also looking at, face shields, goggles, Tyvek suits, just to have some in the case, that we have a COVID positive patient. We want to have like a little biohazard kit on each vehicle, just in case.
One other question I had, of course, obviously, we're not efficient on the number of people we're transporting, but is the inefficiency and the extra fuel cost, is that something we can also go back and ask for
Yes, sir.
carries money on.
Yes, sir, and we already did that on phase 1, and we're going to do it on phase 2 and phase 3 if they allow us to apply for phase 3 funding.
Good deal, all right. I assume that, but the word assume, you have to kind of make sure that something we can get reimbursed for. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Did a great job. We appreciate it.
Everybody have a good day.
Next on our agenda is 2019 tax settlement with Bill Tyson, if he's available.
They gave a thorough report. I was impressed.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. I brought Amy Bain. Most of you know her, I'm sure, head of our collections division, because I wanted to make sure we had somebody who could answer any questions that you might have. So,
You can remove your mask if you want to.
that being said, we're required by statute, before we send out the bills for 2020, which they're on the verge of going out, we have to provide a settlement statement. What's happened is that in years past, it was simply sent over to the county manager, and she presented that to you as part of her report. So we've already done that as well, but we have a little presentation today that Amy and I will help take you through that. And it includes the actual settlement statement for 2019, but it also includes some things you've been asking about before, motor vehicles, these kinds of things, and how maybe the pandemic has affected the collections on that. So anyway, Amy's put together a little report here, tells.
That's it right there, Jean.
But y'all had sent an updated version.
Yeah.
So I need to get to, okay, here we go. Now. And the advancer.
For those who are listening, we're having some technical difficulties, so we'll be right back with you.
Yes, as we did, we have done this as we normally did. Per general statute, we are required to make a report of what we've collected in the current fiscal year and then prior years. Basically, this report is a summary of what we've charged, what we've discovered, and any late listing penalties, and then what we have collected and released upon that levy. This report, it also will show the charge levy and the collections of our real, our public service and motor vehicles, and GAP registration bills, and a little comparison over this. I went to a collectors conference back in the fall, and it was presented, this was kind of presented how it was. Durham County uses this kind of report for their commissioners, and it just seemed to break it down. But this is the basic of what we would always present to the county manager every year. It just basically is the basic balance sheet of what we've done. And then then this year, this is a little bit what was different. We've broken it down. So we've broken it down to what we do in our office, and then we added the public service, the motor vehicle aspect that comes from North Carolina VTS collections with tax and tag, and then the GAP bills. GAP bills is been introduced to us, and we have to do it by statute, and basically it's just billing for the time if a car is off the road and that person goes in to renew the tag again. There may be a 2-month, or it can be up to a 60-month. I've seen GAP bills up to 60 months, 5 years basically. They've had the car off the road for whatever reason. Could have been a bad transmission. It could have been it was wrecked. You know, we hear all sorts of stories with it. But this is what we have done for this year. And then that, when you average that all in, that's what, if you averaged everything in, that's what we have collected. And then I ran a comparison over our past 5 years. Now, gap bills, if you notice, there's only 2 years worth of that because we began that with the 2018-2019 levy. We did not do that any years prior to that. If you're looking at why that percentage is such a difference in the gap bills from 19 to this past year, I really think a lot of it is the first year we did gap bills, we did not get a full year's worth of data from Department of Revenue. And some of that was some IT issues. But then we did push, I think a lot of people got the bill and they just didn't know they paid it. And so maybe that was, but I do know that when I ran a comparison a way back, most of the collections on gap bills came after the interest had begun. So we forcibly had to go after that stuff. And then this year, I think a lot of that is COVID related. Plus we had like 4,000 gap registration bills versus in the 2018, we only had like 1,800 bills for that fiscal year. So that is, that's a breakdown of how we've tried to do it. Obviously, public service, that's, I guess, money you can bank on. We always have a 100% collection rate with that. Motor vehicles is a little bit lower. That's always been a thorn in our side, even when we did it in our office. It was billed and collected. It was a hard task to get motor vehicles collected. And even though this year it seems like it went up a little bit with COVID, I don't really that was surprising to me.
Very surprising to me too, because obviously with the delay that the states allowed them to be, gave you a window of opportunity. I'm tickled that it's better. I thought it would be substantially less.
I did too, Mr. Penny. I thought it would be less than that too.
One other thing about that is that there was that 5-month deferral period, and this should go up as a percentage of actual collections, because now that was March through July, and now those will be coming in, those deferred bills will be being collected for this period from September to January. So that even should increase a little bit, we're hoping.
If you don't mind, for the people listening, could you just read out the percentages for the current fiscal year?
For the current fiscal year.
For last year, I'm sorry.
For the year ending in June of this year, our real and personal property collection rate was 99.2%. Our public service was 100%. Our motor vehicles was 91.29%, and then the gap billing was 64.64%. And we've been pushing on those gap bills very hard, that we've had a little bit of lull before these new tax bills go out, and we're getting results back from either wage levies or sending the sheriffs out to collect those. So we're pushing to get it collected. It's just tough sometimes.
I thought that when we started doing the motor vehicles, that we'd have a higher percentage, because people are having to pay the tax when they renew their license. Why would it not be close to 100%?
Because people just they don't go in and renew their tag. They may run their vehicle on a dead tag.
Oh, I got you.
And this is much higher than it was when we did it.
Oh, yes, this is way much higher than when we
Ours
were
was
billing
more in the
them.
60s and 70s.
Oh, yes. When we were billing motor vehicle bills every month in our office and collecting them, it was about 75%.
Okay.
So this has, Tax and Tag really has brought it together the way it should be. But still, people just don't care.
People actually would drive on the road without having to renew their tags. I declare. I can only imagine that.
If it was probably any of us, we'd be caught.
Yes.
Or like your chairman was in Frederick, Maryland, at a road stop and found out my license plate had been expired about 6 months because I hadn't looked, and I was out of state. But fortunately for me, the Maryland Highway Patrol was very nice and let me get back to North Carolina.
But we just felt like it was important for you to hear from the tax office, even though they usually just do it through me and I give you the report. We felt like they needed to kind of come in and give you the historical data and just let you know they are doing a very good job in the tax office
And
with
that
collections.
it was a change
Right.
too, seeing this, and when I saw this presentation given to us, it was more of a tool take and say, well, this is something we can show to the commissioners and show to the public that we are what we get to do on a daily basis.
Well, we are pleasantly surprised, and thank you, because the percentages have maintained possibly better with this COVID than probably that I thought that they would. So I'm very excited to see that.
I can honestly say every time I go in, Mr. Tyson would ask, how are things going once COVID hit? I was thinking that we would beat last year's percentage. That was my goal and our staff's goal. But once March came, I knew that that wouldn't happen. I was just wanting to get to 99%. And as you see, we got to 99.2, and I don't think that's too shabby with what we've encountered.
And we will continue to collect on the others that are not there too.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Next up on our agenda is discussion regarding Shawtown leases with Brian Haney. Of course, he's still out with, is he here?
He's on the phone.
Oh, he's on the phone. All right. All right. Good morning, you dad. Give us a baby update, and then give us your report.
Okay, thank you all for allowing me to do this today. Basically, we need to have a discussion about the lease agreements for the entities that are occupying the renovated Shawtown Community Development Center, which, as you know, was a renovated portion of the former Shawtown School campus that opened for use about a year ago. Part of this presentation will be just kind of giving you information and seeing if you have any questions, and then we do have one item that we need some direction on from you. So the board approved lease agreements with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Carolina, Robin Page Club, and the reentry program, along with Harnett United PAL on August 19th of 2019. There was no agreement for the other entity that was in this facility, Workforce Development Career Center, since that is technically falls under the county. The initial term for, well, first I'm going to talk a little bit just about the Boys and Girls Club and reentry, because their agreement is a little bit different than the PAL agreement. So the initial term of those agreements was for 3 years. They terminate on August 30th, 2022, and may then be renewed for an additional 5-year term. Per the lease agreement for those two entities, the rent for the initial term of the lease was $1 a year, and then beginning in year 2, which starts September 1st of this year, and for all subsequent years of the initial term and renewal term, the lessee shall pay the average cost of utilities as defined later in the lease agreement. So in section 16 of the agreement, utilities are defined as electricity, gas, sewer, water, and trash collection for the premises. So we, with that in mind, we have facilities calculate based on the floor plan, the percentage that each department each entity occupies in the building, and then they took the average cost of utilities on a monthly basis for the past year that they've been monitoring from August of 2019 through July of this year, and have split that out, and then based on the portion of the building that each entity occupies, that is what we are proposing to charge them on a monthly basis for the second year of the agreement. And again, these are only the Boys and Girls Club of Central Carolina, Robin Page Club, and reentry. So to give you that information, the total monthly average for the building for utilities is $2,182. And that is comprised by Duke Energy, which is the electricity for the building, Town of Wellington is water and sewer, and Waste Industries is the trash collection. There's no gas on the premises. So the Boys and Girls Club percentage, they occupy 22% of the total square footage of the facility. Their total monthly average for last year, which is what we would propose charging them going forward for this next year, is $644 a month. That is comprised by $480 of the Duke Energy bill, $105 of the Town of Wellington bill, and then $59 for Waste Industries. For reentry, they occupy 13% of the total square footage. which would leave them with a monthly average of $381 a month. $284 from Duke Energy, $62 from the town of Bloomington, and $35 from Waste Industries. I've reached out to both organizations to make them aware of this transition, which, again, was outlined and discussed with them when these agreements were approved. Boys and Girls Club has responded to thank me for the heads up, and I have not yet heard from Reentry, but I have reached out again to them. So unless the board has any questions on this issue, though we will begin billing them on a monthly basis beginning September 1st of this year. Are there any questions or comments?
Commissioners? We're in favor of doing that? I see no objections. Do we need, well, we'll actually vote on it. Okay.
Then the next question is for the Harnett County Sheriff's Office Police Athletic League. The initial term of that lease terminates August 30th of this year, and it may be renewed for another 2-year term, and then for an initial 5-year term. And the reason it is somewhat different than the other 2 leases is that there was some discussion of whether or not they would be charged utilities after the first year of that lease, since it is a quasi-county entity that does fall under the sheriff's office for the county. So per that lease agreement, the initial term, they paid $1 per year, and prior to the first renewal term, which is coming up again September 1st, the county must decide whether, the Board of Commissioners must decide whether the lessee will be responsible for the average cost of utilities or a portion thereof. The same calculation that was used for the others we've got for the Police Athletic League, that would be a total monthly average of $733, with $546 from Duke Energy, $119 for the town of Bloomington, and $68 for Waste Industries. And that's based on 25% of the space. Now, I reached out to Mark Hornsby with the PAL program and to just kind of see what his thoughts were and the ability to do this. And he said that with the exception of what was received from the county through the nonprofit funding process, all of the money that PAL has is raised through tournaments and other events, which have not been held due to COVID-19. So he said at this time they do not have the funding to pay the cost of utilities in this facility. And again, this is a quasi-county department, so it is a bit unique. But the question before the board is how do you want us to move forward with this? You could require PAL to pay the cost of utilities, or decide to not require them to pay that for the full term of the lease agreement. Or you can delay this decision for another year and see if this is more affordable next year when hopefully we aren't dealing with COVID-19 and they're able to have their event. But we wanted to bring it before you just because it's required prior to the lease expiration, and just see what the board's thoughts are on that issue.
Just a question I've got. So right now, Boys and Girls Club in Reentry, they are paying no utilities, or are they paying an amount that we agreed upon they would pay? Refresh my memory on that one.
The agreement a year ago for the first year of occupancy, and this was, I think, primarily because the building had been renovated, nobody was in it, so we really didn't know what the average cost of utilities was, so it was difficult to come up with a figure that we weren't really just pulling out of the air. So now that we've got that data, that was the understanding that we would take the average cost from the previous year and then have them pay a portion of that going forward. And that was what everybody kind of agreed to when those agreements were put in place.
Brian, this is Chris. And,
they have been split paying $1 for the first year. Starting September 1st of this year, the understanding is they will pay the monthly cost of utilities. And Chris, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine. And just regarding the reentry and Boys and Girls Club, that it is required that they pay utilities, and it is solely our decision what that number will be. So if we came up with, as long as it's obviously reasonable, but they don't really have much of a say. They agreed to pay utilities in year 2, and it's based on the average use. So those numbers, it's generally non-negotiable if the board's okay with it for those 2 entities.
Also refresh my memory, when we got the list of the nonprofits who we were giving money, we gave some monies to some entities, and I can't remember if we gave any to Boys and Girls Club or not. I know we had some discussion about that, so that would be a mechanism, I guess, even if they were charged, that we could.
It would be up to them how they use the funds you gave them
Okay.
through the nonprofit. They did not object, to my knowledge, they did not object to paying it, because like Chris said, it was part of the lease agreement,
Okay.
and they're comfortable with it.
So it really gets down to what we're going to do with PALs is.
And Pal, as Brian had mentioned, if the board so wishes to give them another year and not paying utilities for this year, is while the current lease says the next renewal term be for 2 years, we could amend it, and I would like to think that Mark Hornsby would be amenable to, is amend it to break it down to 1-year terms instead of a 2-year term. That way we can revisit each time, or leave it as a 2-year term and then put in there that utilities will be discussed each year of the term. I mean, we can do whatever the board so wishes in this situation. If the board wants to make a decision later on because of COVID-19, or again, make them pay the full utilities or make them pay a portion thereof in accordance with the current terms as it is.
Commissioner McCoy, I make a motion that we amended the agreement for 2 years to 1 year. I'm sure it'd be much more feasible for them to pay it 1 year rather than 2 years. And for this year, I think we should just forgive that, because if they're not out there making money, how can they, raising money for the PAL, and that certainly has been the way it's been since March of this year. I know he has done some fundraising, but they've not been able to have the programs and fundraisers that they normally have every year. So that's my motion.
Would that be $1 a year like we've been doing, Barbara?
I think it's only fair.
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause
I second that.
They rely on fundraisers.
Yeah.
And they work hard. They have
They're willing to do it
done
once-
good
Yep.
up until this COVID.
So we'll amend it instead of doing a 2-year renewal term to just do 1 year each and then revisit utilities.
That's right.
After this
That's
next
my-
year.
that's
And I
my
second
motion.
that.
This is a motion for a directive to the board to amend the lease, and then you could put it on consent.
Right.
Actual voting at
That's
the
right.
regular meeting.
That's right.
Brian, I think you said this. Is Mark amenable to that kind of a situation where we amend the contract and do 1 years after this?
I think Mark is, excuse me, I think Mark is amenable to the board, considering it again next year. Certainly in talking to him in the past, it does seem that he, he is working hard to raise funds for the program, and I think he certainly appreciates the board to consider the $1 a year going forward. But I think he certainly, certainly this coming year, he said it is not feasible for him to pay that, and that's something that we can have another discussion next year if the board wants to, if y'all would like to push that forward another year and do it.
So I'll go ahead and amend it per the board's wishes here.
Do we need to vote on this?
Well, we don't vote in work session, do we, Dwight? Or
No, you're just giving them a consensus directive.
yeah,
a
we can
directive.
put it on the consent agenda, yes.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
And Brian, you didn't give the baby update.
You didn't give us a baby update. I guess
Changing
Brian-
the diaper
I
already.
guess Brian, yeah, he's changing diapers, I guess. Okay,
Everything's going very well. Very well. So thank you very much, everybody.
thank you. Next on the agenda is possible donation of surplus property from DSS Child Support. Paula Stewart.
Yes, I've been over to child support several times in Irwin, and then since they've moved, and all the furniture that they had at the Irwin location was actually no county money was put into it at all. When they, about 10 years ago, they became a county department, but prior to that, for the last 25 years, they were a state agency. So all that furniture was purchased by the state. So it's your old standard government-looking furniture that does not go with our new modern child support office. So they've got quite a bit of furniture. They've already taken anything that was not usable, they've already taken it to the landfill. We had a container put there, and they were able to go through and get rid of a lot of things, but there are some things that are still usable. And their wish, if the board approves, is to, there's several ways you can get rid of county property, since that is now county property. One way you can donate, we just have to put it on consent agenda to do a donation, and they're looking at either Beacon or Habitat or any of those agencies, just not sure yet. They were going to let other departments go through and just see if there's anything usable, like umbrella racks and things that are coat racks, things like that are still usable. But there's a lot of desks and file cabinets they no longer need. So I just wanted to get your feeling so we could go ahead and put that forth on the 17th as a consent agenda item to donate the furniture. And it was just, if you tell us which organization or both or however you want us to do it, that's what we'll do. With your permission.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, me too.
We don't need to store it.
No, and we don't plan to. That was one of their directives. When you clean out, we're going to get rid of and give it, donate it to a worthy cause if possible. So.
Okay. Well, we'll leave that, I guess, up to your discretion, which, both of them, that concept of who would get the, would be great.
Okay, I'll speak with them. I think they had some ideas. So I'll get back. We'll just make sure we word the agenda properly.
Okay.
And I think that commissioners will have to adopt a resolution.
Right.
Okay.
To draft that.
So if it's not the 17th, it'll be the next meeting, but I think we probably can get it done by Monday.
Okay. Next up, Paul, I guess you're up again, County Manager's Report.
County Manager's Report. So if you will, before you'll see the draft agenda for Monday night. Several things are on here again. The items that are listed in red, which are the reimbursement agreements for the towns for the Corona Relief Funds. Just so you know, Andrew and Irwin approved their agreements last week. Dunn and Lillington are supposed to approve theirs at their meetings this week, and Coates should also, Dunn and Lillington should approve today, and Coates should approve on Thursday. So we should be able to have all of these agreements with the towns approved Monday night. And this is where the towns are supposed to receive 25% of our Corona Relief Funds for their purposes. And the other things on the consent agenda are we will add the furniture for DSS. We will add the amend the lease for PAL for the Shawtown lease. And then this is the item E is the adoption of the order directing the tax administrator to collect taxes for the 2021 levy year, as well as collection of all delinquent taxes. The Sheriff's Office requests, item F, they request to approve the health services agreement in the amount of $389,538.72 with Southern Health Partners for inmate health care. Item G is where Hart's request approval of the fiscal year 21-5311 grant agreement in the amount of $285,696. Total county match is $42,856. And then the only other thing we have on Monday night is the recognition of our Harnett County EMS system for receiving the 2020 Mission Lifeline Gold Plus, and this is the 4th year in a row that our staff has received that. So we're going to recognize their staff that night. And as far as appointments that we need to go over before the meeting, the Adult Care Home Advisory Committee, Annie Owens seeks reappointment to serve a 3-year term. And then on the Board of Adjustment, Willie Searles seeks reappointment as an alternate for District 1. David Capon would like to be appointed to serve as an alternate member representing District 3 on the Harnett County Board of Adjustment, and his application is attached in your packet.
Okay.
Well, it will be, yeah, it'll be in the packet. Actually, it goes out tomorrow. It will be in there. And then the upcoming meetings we have, the only other thing we have, again, Monday night meetings, and then this Friday and Saturday is the rest of the NCACC virtual conference that we attended last week as well. We will have this room open again this Friday if you would like to come to that. And we will not have the building open on Saturday. You're welcome to do that from the leisure of your home. The only other items I have, we are proposing to do a virtual ribbon cutting for the new DSS edition. We wanted your feedback on that. Possibly, we thought about doing it Monday prior to our board meeting, trying to work through the details, and Ashley would do like a Facebook Live and just kind of do a ceremonial ribbon cutting, but not really do, not have people there. It would mostly just be whoever you guys want to attend. And the DSS board would also be there. So that's hopefully a plan, and we'll get that out as soon as we confirm with Paul Felinsky about their availability to be here. And also I wanted your permission to allow a blood drive to take place at the Commons area on September 10th in the afternoon. They're really in need of blood right now, and I spoke with Larry Smith and John Rouse about this, and they're using the CDC protocols, and he said the Red Cross really has it down pat during COVID. They've been having successful blood drives. So we feel okay doing it for this one event. We can clean before and after the event, the Commons area, but we do feel like the public wants to do something, and we feel like we should open it up for that. So I wanted y'all's permission to allow them to have the Red Cross blood drive on September 10th.
I think it's great.
And they do all the testing, they take temperatures, and they do all the screening before, and the Red Cross does all that. Our staff just helps with it. So.
Is it by appointment? I guess it's by appointment.
It's by appointment. They'll be sending something else once we get your approval.
Is that something we need to take a vote on, or we can just do it by
By
information?
consensus, it's fine.
Consensus?
What's that date?
September 10th, and it'll be sometime in the afternoon, probably 12 to 5. I'm not sure exactly. I've just been told it would be the afternoon.
What day of the week is it?
I think it's a Thursday. Let me double check.
Well, I saw all positive nods, so I'm assuming that's good to go.
It's a Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Oh, I'm sorry, it is a Thursday. I'm looking at the wrong month. It's Thursday, September 10th. So once we get they'll send out an email and we'll make sure you get it for the announcement so people can sign up to give blood.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Before we ask that closed session question, I wanted to bring the other commissioners up to speed on one thing that Commissioner Mark Johnson and I met with, actually with S.T. Wooten yesterday in Dunn about the delay on being able to complete jobs on I-95 due to being able to get its permitting to do some things through Harnett County Public Utilities, and that was a concern to us because of the delay in the time, and S.T. Wooten was about to pull off and not complete those two interchanges down there. One at, I believe it's Pope Road at Hardy World, and the other one is the one below that, and that was concerning to both of us commissioners, and so we got involved, and I called Manager Stewart, and I've also talked to Steve Ward, and they gave me a schedule. This thing, they've had delays for up to 5 months. They've already pulled one crew off and sent them somewhere else, was about to pull. I would say the majority of the problem, Commissioner Johnson, was communications, I think would be a good way to say it. And they would submit a plan, then they were given the next thing to do and the next thing to do. And I have a whole list of about 9 things that just kept being one more thing to do, and on behalf of Harnett County, I apologize for that. So I guess my question, if Steve's listening in, or county manager, or assistant county manager, I would assume that we would have a check-off list that we provide to a builder, a homeowner, anyone, so when you come in, here are the things you need to do to bring all your documentation, because they brought in stacks of documentations to Commissioner Johnson and myself yesterday to look at. I did get a call. I did talk with Steve Ward late yesterday afternoon, and about 10 o'clock or so yesterday, those permits were granted so S.T. Wooten could continue on. But I just wanted to let other commissioners know in case you get a phone call, and to make sure that as a county, we are not a hindrance, but an asset to try to help. That does not mean carte blanche, you come in and whatever, but I think we should have a system in place to not impede progress, particularly because of the scope of what's going on in 995. And we talked about today with Hart's, with DOT funding is not as plentiful as it was due to gas taxes and then some other issues that DOT has had. But I just wanted to bring that to the commissioners or anyone else who may be listening about trying to move that project forward. So.
And just to give you a little bit more information, I spoke with Steve as well yesterday, and part of the problem when you guys end up hearing things, and I'm not saying this is every time, but sometimes when y'all hear stuff, you're hearing it from the contractor.
Absolutely.
So the problem is not always between the contractor and utilities. There's other things going on, like this time DOT had a hand in the delays as well. So I want the listeners and you guys to know that, you know, we try to do everything we can to work with the contractors, but they have turned their stuff over to an engineer, which in this case is DOT. So that engineer has to work with our engineer, and communication is a problem, and we are going to work on that. But I don't want listeners or you to think that we're not doing our job or that utilities is always the hold up, because there's just a lot of things that our staff has to make sure is right before they can let it proceed. I do agree this was a very long time to wait on this, and you know our staff is aware of that, but there was fault on both sides. So just so you know, in most instances, what you hear may or may not be all of the information that has been given, you know, to us. So, because their main thing is getting that check, they're waiting to get their money, and I get that it's a holdup, but sometimes, and like I said, in this instance, it was fault on both sides. So we take our blame, and I hear what you're saying, and we're going to do a better job of trying to give people the information up front.
Well, I think Commissioner Johnson too, same thing. We defend, I will not name the employee, because we've got one young man, bless his heart, he's got everything piled, and my suggestion was to Mr. Ward, and we've had this discussion as commissioners many times, we just feel like we need that particular employee needs some additional help to make sure, because with all the building growth we've got and everything going on, and the Wooten Company was not being as accusatory as much as they just tell us what we need to do, because there's other arteries coming off on other streets that's going to be coming one right after another. We just want to make sure that going forward, and that was the gist of it. It was a pleasant meeting. It was not adversarial. So I just want to make sure if I implied that was not. They just want to know how to navigate through our system, and that's what it was. But
and we did ask.
We hate for y'all to have to get involved. I think that's where it becomes. I think that's where some of this communication. They hate that we sometimes feel. Staff feels like, why do these people call commissioners when they don't call us? Like nobody ever called me about it, nobody ever called Steve about it to my knowledge, and they go straight to a commissioner. I think that's where I'm just trying, I get a little bit defensive because we have tried very hard to change the reputation of Harnett Regional Water, and it's a process ongoing.
Well, I did ask her.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. That's a normal process. I mean, when those people get upset and everything, and they feel that, and it's actually not true that you're not doing everything you can, but it's just a normal process for them to call the commissioners.
It is, and we understand that, but you know, sometimes it just amplifies something when it maybe not needs to be that amplified. But Commissioner Johnson.
Paul, I did ask the ST Wooten representative if they thought any of the responsibility may lay on them for the delays, any at all, and they said absolutely some of it could and probably did, so they were not totally blaming the county, so they knew that they had some tightening up to do themselves.
And also, actually, the chain of events was ST Wooten went to William Elmore, the mayor of Dunn, then the mayor of Dunn calls the two commissioners for his area, so that was the chain of events. And so, but again, it was a positive meeting, and they just knew that if they pull that crew off and left. But the other thing, remember, a contractor like Wooten or any contractor, they've got like 1 year to complete it, and if they don't do it, then they start getting penalized. And so that's the reason, and they're starting to run towards the end of that year. So that was what accelerated everything. But the learning curve for us is employees of the county and for commissioners is, as I keep telling them, we're better people than that, and if we got an issue, we can resolve it. We will find out what it is, and we'll put protocols in place to correct it, and that was.
And I hear what you're saying, and we are working on it, so just so y'all know, it's not like I said, it is a process, and we're trying to come up with creative ways to handle the overload of work that the one individual and then that whole department has.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Now I'm gonna ask that question, do we have a closed session?
Now, Mr. Chairman.
I got something I
Okay,
need to say.
thank you, Ms. Barbara.
I want to say to Paula and to the EMS, Larry and all, I got the email yesterday where you all are going to be distributing the masks out to the school. I think it's the right place to give those masks out to, and I think it's the right thing to do simply because if these kids going back to school, there's a way for parents that can't afford these masks to get masks. People tend to not realize some of these masks are expensive, and some people can't afford it, especially with this pandemic and people are not working, you know. So I want to say I appreciate it, and tell Larry, thank you.
I will, and just so the public knows, we will be having a public mask distribution at Harnett Central High School and one at Overhill High School this month. We don't have the dates and times confirmed, but I believe there's about 25,000 masks that will be distributed, so that's quite a lot.
Is there anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? We are adjourned.
I did want to show y'all something that I found when I was looking up